So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So right there's 80. Then you got three, you got 90 something programs. That's up like 10 in the last 2 years, 3 years. That's great. We're seeing good growth on the Division III side. But now I go down here. Look at this. These are all the teams and the records. So that's a nice thing to know. What teams are on top? What teams are on the bottom? But now you get into some funny stuff here, which is, I shouldn't say funny, but fun stuff. Is here's the player stats. Now, what's cool about this is go right below that. I can see the nationality of where all the players are coming from. You can see that NCAA hockey is 77% American. But if I click this green button, and I think this is only on the premium, this brings me up to all of the stats. You know, this is a sequential, you know, from top to bottom, from the top points getter all the way down, you know, across the board. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this is I want to know how many of these players played NA3HL. So I go up here and I put NA3, it'll find it for me. I put NA3HL. Now I've got a search filter on here, the premium filter, and I apply that filter. It'll show all the players that made their way through the NA3HL to play any level of Division III hockey. Now I scroll through that list and get to the bottom, and I look at that number. There's 281 players, and then goalies, 24, and then the less than 10 games. So there's probably 50 goalies. Now the less than 10 games they do, so you can kind of get to see who's playing and who doesn't play. But now I know that that number right there, there's 281 plus goalies. You know, you've got well over 300 players that came through the NA3HL. Now I can do that with any of the tier 3 leagues. I want to know about the USPHL. I can type in the USP. It should populate for me. Right there's the Premier. I grab that, boom, hit that filter, and I can see how many players come from that league. Now, don't forget the difference. Mike, what's the difference right now between NCAA or NA3? There's what, 30 teams, and there's probably 90 teams at USPHL?
Yeah, I think there's at least like 81 teams, I think, in the USPHL Premier.
So now we'd expect that number to be crazy. I go down here and look to see how many players. I got that list again. There's I put in the filter for USPHL Premier. I go down, I can look at each kid individually. Now there's 571, but remember, it's 3 times bigger of a league. Now, the other thing that you got to be careful of here, this is where you do your homework. You go back to that list and look to see what level those teams are at, because you're going to find that there's programs here that are on the bottom end that will get a lot of the USPHL Premier players. Now, not the top end USPHL teams. They do very well, excuse me, but you'll find a little bit of the basement bargain hunting with some of the players coming out of those Premier programs. But between the two tier 2 teams or 2 tier leagues that we looked at, we didn't even talk about the EHL yet. You're what, at 900 plus players, and then we've got another league yet to go without the Canadian leagues by putting in the EHL up here. And if we put in the EHL, you're going to see now the EHL tends to have a little better. They're so focused just on moving players not to the NUL or the USHL or the NCDC. They try to retain their players to get them to good quality D3 programs. Now I look at this and I go down on their list, and I can see that they've got 507 players. So 1,600 players. I didn't even count the goalies there. My point on this is anytime you talk about, you know, moving up to college hockey, Mike, am I back yet?
Yeah, well, it's still on the elite prospects, so.
Okay, just give me a second. I'm hitting buttons, but the computer just isn't moving fast. Am I back?
Yeah, now you're the full screen, so you're sharing your full camera.
That's not me.
But yeah, continue your point though, as far as like the 3 different junior leagues and moving.
Yeah, so you know, when people say, "Oh, I'm playing AA hockey, do I have a route?" Well, now what we can do is let's take that a different step. Let's go up and look at leagues like the EHL. And we'll take that as the place where we're stepping to. And let's say I want to play in the EHL.
You
and
gotta
I-
share your screen again so they can see
yeah,
the,
yeah.
we definitely do not want you on the big screen.
I know. Okay, so now I got the EHL up. If I do the same thing here, I go down here to this green button, I click on that.
We still don't see
It's
it.
really, you should see it.
No, we still got you.
It's still showing me, huh? Okay, let's try it again.
Still you.
Okay, stop share. Okay, I'm done sharing now. And if I go to my toolbar and hit share screen,
There we go.
all right, sorry about that, folks. All right, so now I go down here and I grab that stat bar again to put the filter in with that green bar. Now what I can do with the EHL is I can go up here and I can type in, I can put in tier 2, tier 1. I always forget how they list tier 2 on here.
They usually list it by league, which makes it a little bit harder to do because
Okay, what's the name of your league?
it's it would probably be in here as CS DHL. So you'd have to like, pick a particular birth year.
Let's do the 16s right in the middle. So players that are playing in the EHL, now that's an Eastern League. You don't have many players coming from your area. Now, if I go up here and I put in the NA3HL, and then we'll do the USHL too. This will give you an idea of where you're getting looks at for what you want to do. So there's the 3HL, and I go down here, find that green box. I can put the filter in. Now, once again, maybe I'm not using the best one because it's not giving you macro to macro. I thought there was a tier button here that pulled up tier 3, maybe, or excuse me, tier 2 to show you for the junior tier 3. So I'm sorry, Mike, what was that again?
CS DHL.
Yeah, now this is only giving us a peek at just the CDHL, CSDHL. What I really wanted to show you is, overall, but it still works. You just have to do a little bit more homework on each of the different leagues if you want to get a macro picture here. How many teams are in the league?
Depending on the age level, it could be anywhere between 10 and 12.
Yeah, so just now looking at the NA3, now you're talking about 39 players there, and then a few goalies, 5. So you got 40 plus players coming out of 10 teams. That's pretty darn good. And the reason I want to show you this is you can reverse engineer all the way down. I can do this with an NHL team. I can say, I want to play in the NHL. Where are those kids coming from? And I can walk all the way back across the board on that. So pretty cool. Do you have me back, Mike?
Yeah, you're good now. You're back in the gallery. So I think a couple more questions came in from the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey guys, Kyle here. I'm just gonna jump in. I'm getting texts also that I think people are starting to get a little confused on all the terminology that you guys use on a day-to-day basis with NA3 and EHL and everything.
No
I
problem.
think that there needs.
I'll take care of that. And that's my fault. So
Oh
junior
no,
hockey. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say if you could somehow discuss the different leagues or the entry points that a lot of these Central States players will be looking at, and then what it means, what might be below them. So they're kind of jumping ahead of some entry points, but there's still, what's their path to get to where they want to be. Some of the.
So the direct answer to this is playing at a very elite tier 2 team. Your options are most likely, statistically, 99% of the players are going to play at tier 3 junior hockey from your level before they move to tier 2 or move to college. Now, the 3 leagues that supply players in the United States at the tier 3 level are the NA3HL, which has a direct affiliation to the North American Hockey League. That's where Mike and I have worked with the Lone Star Brahmas. You also have the EHL, which is the Eastern Hockey League, and that's, the name defines it. It's mostly, in the Boston, New York area on the East Coast, and they mostly supply players into D3 programs on that side of the country. The other league is the USPHL, which is affiliated with the NCDC. The USPHL has the elite level and premier level. That's their 2 tier 3s, and they're self-defined as a tier 2 level at the NCDC. So they have 3 different levels of juniors inside the USPHL. When I say self-defined, that's an independent league that has no affiliation with USA Hockey. We used to call them renegade leagues. They dissuade us from calling those leagues that anymore. But it's huge. It's big. They combined a bunch of smaller leagues into one, mega league. But that really also masks a lot of things, because there's no way you can manage a league of 80, 90 teams at certain levels. So 3 choices: EHL, North American League, USPHL. All 3 leagues have great providers. All 3 leagues have mid-level providers. All 3 leagues have poorly managed teams. Okay. That is the game that you try to figure out, is which is which. When you're looking at junior programs, here's a suggestion for you. And I hate to keep doing the screen share, but you want to learn more about it. Mike and I spend a lot of time doing content creation. And am I up yet, Mike?
No, it looks like it's loading.
Okay.
You're
So
good.
this is Junior Hockey Advisor on YouTube, and you want to know about tier 3 hockey, we do a whole broadcast on it. You want to know about being found junior, you want to look at players in leagues in North America, breaking them down. You want to hear from some of the luminaries that are in junior hockey. We do interviews with USHL guys. We do them with D3 coaches, NAL coaches. You can get in here. We do things on how to hire an advisor if you want to do that. Junior hockey talent versus size, age, and experience. How recruiting really works. The Canadian leagues, how they work. All these things, how the drafts work, the tender process works. Things that we might not get into detail on. There's literally hundreds of choices of things to find. Parent pitfalls. We get into topical things too, but you've got just dozens of choices there. And I bring that up because we won't be able to cover everything today. And at least now this gives you a chance to see some things that could help you. Mike, am I back on?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So did that help a little bit explaining the leagues, Mike? Do you think
Yeah, and for those on the call that we'll end up making a Central States team in the fall. Every year at the beginning of the year, we go to Hammond and kind of have our training camp, and we'll go through a presentation where we'll walk through all the different junior leagues from tier 1 at the USHL level to tier 2, of the NA and the NCDC, and then tier 3, which are the 3 different leagues that Jeff just walked through. But for everyone to kind of have an idea, is our entry point at the Central States, and 90% of the Illinois AAA players are going to go into the tier 3 level, which is quote unquote pay to play. And then it's up to them to move their way up to the tier 2 or tier 1.
Right. So Jeff Judge asked the question, a basic question: what's the difference between the various levels? I just explained the 3 leagues that supply that tier 3 level of opportunities. Above that, you have 2 different levels. You have the North American League, which is tier 2. You have the USHL, that's tier 1. Now that covers the United States. The USHL is hands down the best league, junior league in the world now. It's actually statistically surpassed any of the individual major junior, the pro junior leagues out of Canada, which are the OHL, the WHL, and the Quebec League. Those those pro leagues that that are more affiliated with kids that want to go to juniors and go straight to the pros after. They'll go to the EHL, the AHL, sometimes the NHL. You know, that's not in your wheelhouse from where you're at. Those kids are they start getting scouted and groomed for that at 13, and you would know you're part of that if you're in that. What are the typical pathways that you see for both college and juniors? You're in a typical path right now. If you play up through U18 and then step off into juniors, that's a path. That's a very common path. And then from juniors, you have to realize that there's transitional leagues in juniors, and then there's stationary leagues in juniors. A traditional or a transition league is like the NA3HL, because they're looking to pull players from that league to move and advance on. The EHL does not want to advance players by design. They want you to go there and they want you to stay for 2 or 3 years and play in the EHL, then step off into college. So if you're still aspiring to play, you know, pay to play tier 3 and then moving to tier 2, which is free, except for your billet, that's a possibility. There's a lot. We showed that. Did we show the numbers on moving from? Yeah, that was our first stat, wasn't it?
Well, we showed them from NA3 or EHL to NCAA
Okay.
or NCH D3, but we didn't show how many NA3 guys go to the North American League or vice versa.
Right. If you want me to do that, I'll do that. But there's a substantial amount of players that move and transition out of that league. The USPHL is transition only in the sense that they want you to stay Premier, Elite Premier, or NCDC. They're a closed system too. Now, do players leave there? Of course they do, because they're, you know, you've got free control over where you go at the end of the year, but their system is designed to keep you in their system. So, you know, there's some that allow you to move up, and then there's some that don't. Now, there's a whole nother side of this, which is the Canadian junior system that is not the pro level, those major juniors. There's a whole level of junior A hockey in Canada called the CJHL. I recommend you go watch the videos we've got online on that to explain that, because it's options and it's a very viable very, very viable option for a lot of players, but learn about it so we don't waste our time talking about Canadian junior here. It's not a waste of time. It's just that it would take a lot of time to explain that.
Guys, I'm going to jump in one more time. I want to kind of direct this, kind of move us to a different topic, and it's tenders. Because that's I want to make sure we have a chance to go over that. And I think it's a very important topic, because, you know, it's just the next step where parents and players always have the most questions on.
Yeah. And tenders is thrown around a lot, like it has more weight than it does at tier 3. Tenders an agreement between a team and a player that says, hey, Mr. Player, I'm a team. We want you to play with us. We're offering you a tender. That means if you play in that league, you have to play for that team. It gives you the guarantee that you have a place to play at the tier 3 level, but no more, no less. Now, here's the interesting thing about tenders. Tenders is not really a guaranteed roster spot going into the fall. Tenders allow you to be protected going into main camp. It gives you kind of a direct access to main camp. But at the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 levels, all junior hockey, main camp is where things are settled going into the fall. So let's say a main camp has main camps are set up like showcases. That's the best way to think of them. If you haven't had the experience of a main camp yet, teams will have 6 or 10, you know, maybe 8 teams come in and participate in their main camp, and it's made up of returning players, tenders, and draft players. Okay, and this happens once again, the USHL, North American Hockey League. It happens at NA3HL level. Now, those players are also augmented by other prospects and people that, you know, requested to be there. So you send an email to the team looks at you, reviews your information. Maybe they look at some video on you, decide, yeah, we'll let you in. So you've got 6 to 10 teams of players. I think we're running 10 this next week in Lone Star down in Texas. Mike and I are actually heading to Texas tomorrow to be part of that whole week experience with the teams. So if Mike told you he's working really hard next week, no, it's not happening. So he's working really hard. I think we're going from 7 to 7 or 7 to 9 every night. So anyway, the tender process, the draft process, all that does is get you to main camp and get you a seat there. Now you're favored because you were drafted. You're favored because you were tendered, but that doesn't mean you're going to be on that roster that goes into the fall. That means you're at the main camp. You got to earn that spot. So if you go there and lay an egg, there's lots of tenders and there's lots of draft players that won't make a final roster. And it's all about performance at main camp. You know, if they played the way they're supposed to and the way they were recruited and the way they were scouted and they look the same as they were scouted, there should be no problem. They should transition right on the roster. But if you go there and you don't show as well as you did during the season, and you don't show as well against veteran players and don't show as well as against the other pure players that are at a high level, you know, there's a good chance you, even if you're tendered or drafted. Now, the tender's easy. You know, a coach likes you, he comes and talks to you. Maybe you go visit the program. They put a piece of paper in front of you, and it's only for that league. Okay, if I tender in the North American League, the North American NA3 League, which is the Tier 3 version of the NA, that's only for that league. It doesn't have anything to do with the EHL. It doesn't have anything to do with the USPHL. Doesn't have anything to do with going back and playing U18 if I still have eligibility to play U18 hockey. It's just, or high school hockey, whatever. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's just for that league. You're only bound to that team for that league. So a lot of coaches will tell you, oh, you're tendered, you can't go anywhere else. We own you. That's not true. It's only specifically for that league. Remember, the EHL and the USPHL do not belong to USA Hockey, so they don't adhere to the rules of USA Hockey when it comes to tendered players. The other one is drafted players. Drafted players, it is what it is. Now, remember, tendered players we'll start tendering players in September. Mike and I will start actually talking to players and offering them spots for a roster for the 24-25 season this coming September. Tenders are going on through the whole year. Drafts have to wait to the draft month, which is usually June. Then they start drafting players. So most of the tenders are done. So if I'm drafted, even if I'm drafted in the first round, there may have been 6-10 kids that were tendered before me on that team. So to think that I'm the favored because I'm the first, that necessarily isn't true. I could actually be the 7th, 8th, or 9th, player that the team wanted on their roster. So you really got to know where you fit in the mix when you're talking about tenders and drafts. All teams at these levels both use the tender process and the draft process. Mike, anything that I didn't explain or really explained poorly there?
Well, just quickly to add to it, I would just say that most people want to be tendered because they have a say in the program that they're choosing. Whereas if you aren't tendered and you go into the draft, any team could draft you, whether it's the best team in the league or the worst team in the
Mid-City
league.
Junior Stars. Am I right?
What was that?
I'm not sure what that was.
The one question is, what are your options if you're tendered, let's say tendered or drafted, but don't make the roster? So teams in the NA3HL, and I'll speak to that, you're given a summer roster size. I can protect players during the summer that I want. My returning players, my tenders, my drafts, they all fall under a protected umbrella. And that number is usually around 30. During the pandemic, it started flipping back and forth. So I don't have that exact number, if it's 30, 32, 35, what it is, but there's a protected number in the summer. After main camp into the fall, at main camp, I've got to come out of that, 6 to 8 team worth of players. So I have a couple hundred players. I can only come out of there protecting 30 players. So if you aren't on that list of 30 players, you're a free agent. You absolutely can go anywhere you want. And you can try out for any other team, go to any other main camp. You can't go to a main camp for the same league if you're tendered or drafted. So if I get drafted in the North American 3 League, the NA3, and I'm drafted by, let's say, the Brahmas organization, I can only go to their camp. Now, if I don't make the team and I'm released and I don't make that 30-man roster, I'm open to go to anywhere I want to go inside the league or outside the league.
And then, Jeff, what happens the following year? Say you go to, we'll say the Brahmas again. Say you go to the Brahmas at the end of the year. are you still with that club the following year, or do you have to, are you released at the end of the year?
You will be protected going into main camp again as a veteran. So, well, now the
That's
team could
at the
leave you,
NA3 level also?
yeah. So they could leave you unprotected if you don't have a good relationship with a coach and they've got a strong recruiting class coming in, and you were really struggling to hold on to the roster. They might not protect you, but they normally tell you, "Hey, we don't have a spot for you." In fact, 100% of the time they'll tell you, "Hey, we don't have a spot for you next year. Maybe you should start looking for another team." That's rare. That's very rare. If you're a veteran, most veterans, you can expect at the end of the year that you'll be protected going into main camp. But then again, at main camp, the whole cycle starts again. You have to make that 30-man roster coming out of main camp. And that's where it's important to understand there's no gimmies. Now I should take that back. If you're injured, or let's say for example, one year my son lost like 25 pounds during the season. He was at 204 and he was in the low 180s during, over the course of the season. The coach basically said, in main camp, just come out and skate, go through the warm-ups. You're not going to see the ice much, because they were trying to, build him back up and try to get him ready for the fall. And that happens. And don't fool yourself. Juniors is a grind. You will lose weight. You will not go in and hold your weight all year long. You can lift during the season to try to keep that weight up. You can eat like crazy, but that was exorbitant. That was losing more. And that had a lot to do with that meal situation we were talking about, not having a solid billet situation and having a young player that doesn't understand how to talk about that and to relate that to the coaches and his parents to make sure that they know that he's, going gaunt, during the season. So.
Hey, I'm gonna, again, trying to just keep making sure we're touching on all these different topics. Here's a great question. What's the process for being drafted or tendered eligible in the NA3? Meaning that where's the responsibility fall on the player to attend as many camps or get in front of these, or reaching out to teams, or who they want to play for, or what's the process? I'm gonna jump in and have Mike do the first part of this, if you don't mind. Just Mike, you can maybe touch on what we do in terms of trying to get our players tendered for different NA3 teams as it relates as players.
Yeah, well, the first thing is the two different showcases that we typically do for those that have done it in the past. It's typically in Dallas, and then there's the Detroit option. They kind of move it around. Last year there was a Philly option. By us participating in that junior league, it allows any of the NA3 teams to have, they call it the U show is the league. It allows them to tender players from either our team or within that league, that NAPHL showcase division. It gives them the ability to tender our players. So it makes them, like the leagues themselves, they have to use those tenders on players in the Central States League. So it gives our players that much more opportunity. Aside
not in the
from
Central,
that,
Mike, I'm going to interrupt, not in the Central States game league, as not all leagues, not all teams in our league participate.
yeah, that's true. Now they started dropping out. So it's just those that choose to do it. We happen to choose to do it because we're really big on player advancement. We want to move our kids to juniors so they can get on the track to play in college hockey, because all these kids want that opportunity. So, we'll be doing it again, but by us doing that, we have a huge advantage by, being a part of those showcases. Aside from that, the different relationships that I have, that Kyle has, that Coach Robo has, that Harry has, all of us coaches have all these different connections of either, for Kyle and I, kids that we used to coach that are now coaching at these different junior leagues. Harry and Robo, they've got buddies that they played with that are now running different programs or whatnot. So what we like to do is just get our players exposure. They'll go down and practice with some of these different teams from different leagues. And then it's kind of up to them on where they feel the most at home and have the right type of fit. Even though I have a personal relationship and work for the Brahmas, not everybody's going to want to go to Texas, and not everyone's going to be a Brahma. So they got to find the right opportunity. And us as a Jet staff, we try to connect those dots with our players as best we can so they can choose what the right fit is for them. So we do a lot of that. If you play for a program where they're not doing that, then it does fall on you, the parent or the player, to start reaching out to these different programs. And Jeff, I can let you speak to that because
Yeah, the biggest thing Mike's saying about what you guys do, that's an anomaly. You know, that's a bonus. You've got almost a built-in family advisor for you, or staff of advisors working for you. The normal process on this is it's the grunt work by the player and the parents. And it's the emails, it's the text, it's the sending out videos. Now, no matter what your organization is doing for you, I would absolutely suggest that you start a YouTube page with just some 20, 30-second clips up there where a coach can go. So instead of sending a coach a whole file that's, a gigabyte or whatever that, the number is, I don't know what they are, do a YouTube channel with just your little clips and send that in an email to the coach where they can just click on that and go and look at it on YouTube and do it in small clips, like do forechecking, do back checking, just do them so you can click on it and just see 3 or 4 forechecks, 3 or 4 back checks. You want to do the goals too, you do your goals, but make them very, very short. The longer these videos, that's the tune out period where coaches watch the first 30 seconds, they're done anyway. You're wasting your time. But if you put some easily clickable little pieces, they'll click on 3 or 4 of those and they'll get a sense of what you are. Remember, that's only trying to open the door for you. That's only trying to get more interest. You don't want to give them the whole, pie. You just want to give them a taste so they want to come back and buy the pie. Okay. I hope that makes sense. And what you're getting in your organization, we didn't talk about this ahead of time. That's unbelievable. The fact that you've got, there's tier 1 programs out there that don't get that level, that sell themselves on giving you that level of what's actually happening for you. But regardless of what they're doing for you, take it upon yourselves to get video out there. Take it upon yourselves to still reach out to teams, because, hey, this is sales. This is marketing. If anybody knows anything about sales or marketing, I come from an MBA background. So, the sales and marketing process is ingrained in me. You want to drip on people. You want to drip, drip, drip until they either say no, definitively no, like absolutely not, or they keep going, well, maybe I'll look at them again. I'll give them a shot, So the drip process, let your coaching staff and the organization drip from this thing over here where they're recommending. Over here, you send emails, you go to those showcase camps, all of those things combined. If you have former coaches that can vouch for you, if you're using a goalie coach, if you're using a power skating coach, I would rely on any source I can to give me good endorsements, to write recommendations. If you do power skating clinics, maybe get a clip of you doing some work there, some advanced work on your footwork, and put that little clip up on your YouTube page. That YouTube page should be, you send out 50 emails to coaches. The next day you should see on your YouTube page 30 clicks where people went on and watched those videos. And that's kind of how you see, you test the water, and if you're effective on getting your message out there.
That's great, guys. Hopefully it's not hard to find those clips of you forward checking and back checking. Otherwise, it's this page we're going to have is,
Unless you're a goalie.
Well, speaking of goalies, I'm glad you brought that up, because we got a couple of them on listening in, and it seems like they always get brushed over, or it's a topic that just doesn't come up often. It seems like the goalies route to get to juniors and everything is just a little bit more convoluted, a little bit more. There has to be a little bit more work done on that. Do you have any advice for our goaltenders and how they can get?
Unfortunately, we're out of time for the goalie parents right now, and we won't be able to get to that. So listen, I'm going to give you a story about a goalie, and because I think goalies absolutely are in a different world. I've experienced, and I personally haven't done this, but I've experienced Division I coaches that walk into buildings and see less than 5 minutes of a goalie in net and are down recruiting that goalie off his play and off his actions. That doesn't happen with forwards. It doesn't happen with defensemen, but I've seen Division I coaches walk into a rink, and see a goalie for the first time with no background on him and go, I want that kid, and goalies spark coaches in a different way than they spark that forwards and defensemen, turn coaches on. Now, there was a kid that played out of the Buffalo, a Rochester kid that I'm in Western New York, that played out of Buffalo, won a national title at U18, first year U18 player. He was a junior in high school, and he just had a good run. Boom, he's made it from winning a national title with the Buffalo program, the Buffalo Junior Sabres program, went right to the Chicago Steel. Kid's name is Billy Sauer. And he's playing for the Chicago Steel, that 1 year out of U18 hockey, which is that's a good jump. That's a real good jump. That everybody thought was amazing because nobody had him on the radar at all for playing at that level. One good weekend at nationals and things happened. Now, what happened next was he was being interviewed. Actually, I was interviewing him on the radio. My next guest was my former coach at Michigan, Red Berenson. Red Berenson was in, the it's called the green room. It's virtual green room. He's listening to the show, waiting for his turn to go on. And he's listening to Billy Sauer talk. While he's waiting, texted his assistant coach. His assistant coach got in a car from Ann Arbor, drove 6 hours to Chicago to watch practices and watch their game for that weekend. He had an offer before the weekend was over because he liked what he heard and how he carried himself on the radio as a person. And that intrigued the coach enough to send an assistant coach out there. He actually had to graduate from high school over the summer to be prepared to go to Michigan in the fall, and was a starting goalie at Michigan at 18 years old. Now, was he a AA player? No, but he was a low-end AAA player the year before that. Nobody had him on the radar. Nobody at all. So goalies can move in this world, and you see it all the time. The North American, the North American League, the NAHL, has goalies that were playing tier 3 that bounce around to 3 or 4 teams inside the North American League, and then they're in the USHL, then they're playing D1, then they're getting drafted. Goalies, the transitionary part of the game, that nomadic side of goalies at juniors is different. You have to be prepared to roll with the punches. And there's a kid that was named Andrew Takic that played in the league a couple of years ago. Mike probably remembers him. 1 year he's on the worst team in the league, and his goals against was 4+, I think, maybe 5+. It was a horrible team, and it looked like he just kind of gave up. The next year, 1 year or 2 years later, he wins the Robertson Cup, is one of the top goalies in the league, and he goes on and plays Division I college hockey. So you're gonna bounce around. You're gonna go a different route, and with goalies much more so than forwards or D. You will get traded if you're playing tier 1 or tier 2. Very often, there's probably about a 35% chance as a goalie you're going to get traded or get moved to another team. That doesn't happen as much with forwards and D. It still happens, but not if the right goalies move around. So I don't know if that answered anything, but
I'm
I can
going
only
to
say
do a follow-up. I'm going to do a follow-up here.
Sure.
So a lot of times you hear that NA3 teams even, but I know some USPHL teams that are local that will carry, 3, 4. I don't think it gets to 5, but like 4 goalies. One's just a practice goalie. What are your experience, or do you have any?
You really got to trust the program.
Okay.
If you get in that situation where they say, "Oh yeah, you're coming as a third," first of all, they know who their number 1 is. If they say you're the number 3, that means you're not number 1. That's the only way to put it. And if they got a solid number 1 and number 2 that are sharing games, and you're number 3, you're going to get less than 10% of the games that year. And you really got to do your homework. And this is a lot of times where the player comes into play more, or guys like both Kyle and Mike can do this too, where they know the history of the program. Do they really take that third goalie and turn him into a number 2 or a number 1? Or is there always just a third and a fourth hanging out, and they don't put the time to develop or really care about seeing that kid progress in their program? There are programs that do. There's programs that have the number 3 absolutely moves up the ranks and only sees, 5 games, 10 games, maybe dresses for 15 games during the year, and plays in, 5 or 10. But you got to trust the program in that situation. Do your homework on the program. There are a lot of operators out there, coaches, that just need, remember, this is the reason why it's pay to play is because you need to pay to play at that level. There is no There is no fan base at tier 3 hockey for the most part. There are some pockets that get fans. I ran all levels of teams at one point. And, if we got 100 paid people in the stands, that was a lot. They covered the refs for the night. It doesn't pay for the ice or our salaries for our staff or the transportation, the food, the hotels on the road. So, you're paying for all those things. And if you're paying not to play, you really have to have some trust in that program that they're going to move you on. So I'd be very careful being a number 3 or a number 4. Now, I'd be a number 4 if if that team said, hey, look, we want you to come out and take shots for us. We know you're playing, for the Jets, and they need somebody to come out and take shots. Absolutely, get out there and see a bigger, stronger, faster shot. But for the most part, I'd be very, very wary of that unless I have a lot of trust.
Hopefully that answers some of the goalie questions that we typically get, but they just have to really, not that everybody's got to do the homework, right? You really have to make sure you're trusting where you're going or sending your player. But as a goalie, you really have to see if it's better being a third or fourth option or possibly on a lesser team being, option. So
I can tell you this on the goalie side: the goalies that are persistent and don't give up through the main camp process, you'll see guys that are cut. Because remember, some of these camps, you'll have, if there's 10 teams there and there's 2 or 3 goalies on a team, there's 30 goalies there. And if there's a returning starter already in the camp, and this is at whatever level, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, the odds of making the team are tough. So you'll see guys that can start in the league that get cut routinely. So you got to persevere. You got to be tough, and you got to grind it out. And you should be going into every main camp. Honestly, this is where the parents got to balance this a little bit. As a parent, you should go into every main camp assuming you're not going to make the team. I wouldn't build that up in the player. I'd let the player, go out there and do what he's got to do. But you should already be on game plan B and game plan C before that game plan A, which is the main camp you're at, is done. There are rosters that don't get settled on goalies. Mike and I'll tell you that, there's times where we're not settled on the 3 goalies that we're carrying in the year. 3 weeks into the year, the season's already started, and we're still, fumbling around with that process and finding the right mix. And remember, tier 3 goalies can get pulled up to tier 2 right out of main camp, between main camp and the beginning of the season, right at the beginning of the season. So perseverance is huge when it comes to goaltending.
Great. Hey, one question that gets asked a lot is academics or going to school while you're playing juniors. Should you take a couple online classes at a college or go to a local community college while you're playing juniors?
Yeah, the local community college situation is extremely tough because you're usually practicing in the afternoon, and teams, for example, if you did go down and make the North American Hockey League team in Dallas, the Brahmas, it's a 9-to-5 job. You're there pretty much every day. You've got workouts, treatment, for any injuries or stretching. You've got individual meetings, you got team meetings, you got video sessions, you got on ice, you got off ice workouts. It's a day-long process. And that, for really good quality tier 3 teams, that's the same thing. You'll get your day is built around being a hockey player. So online classes are wonderful. There's virtually your choice. I know right now, both of my kids use the University of Phoenix when they were playing, and it was a great fit. All the credits transferred across the board. We didn't have any problems at all by wasting credits. And as long as you're not a full-time student, you can take as many classes as you want. 2 classes is probably all you want to take when you're playing juniors. Most kids take 1. We were very fortunate when my youngest son, when he went to college to play hockey, by the time he left 3 years of junior hockey, he was 1 semester away from being a junior in college and was able to take upper level classes, and which is really nice when you walk in and you've already got a lot of the legwork done on the basic classes, then you can have fun at college and take some of the extraordinary classes. So, or more, the meat of what you want to get your degree in and your specialty. So, yes, taking classes, there is a mandate in all of USA hockey junior programs that you either have a part-time job or you're taking college classes. I don't know how strong teams, every team, how much they adhere to that rule and really follow up on it. But that is the rule. The rule is you either have to have a part-time job or you have to be enrolled in college classes. So technically, that's what you should be doing.
The one thing I'll add.
One thing I will say is that it's very important to communicate if your player already has an idea of where he might want to go to school and is going to go play juniors for a year and maybe defer, to have a conversation with the university in terms of any kind of financial package that they put together. A lot of times they'll defer that for a year, but if you start taking any kind of courses, it'll change the package. So just make sure you have all the information before you start making any kind of like that. But I agree that either taking college courses or a part-time job or something like that is you don't want your players with a lot of downtime, but as Mike always says, this is their opportunity to really have hockey as their job or to really work on their game. Mike, do you want to
Yeah.
on that?
Well, I wanted to add one point though, as far as like if you are going to choose to take a couple credit hours, even if it's at a community college or an online school, the one thing you have to be aware of is whether or not that particular school has college hockey. And that could even be at the club level, because if it does, you can't choose that school to even take one class or two classes, because that will start you're eating into your college eligibility as a player if they have a hockey program. So I just want to
that's more like that's been challenged and on brick and mortar, yes. But for example, Penn State does an online program that was challenged because there were players that were never recruited by Penn State, that they never even stepped on the campus and they were allowed to keep their eligibility. So I would definitely check with the clearinghouse at NCAA before I did anything. But that's why a name like Phoenix works so well, because they don't have any affiliation with sports with hockey. They're just University of Phoenix is known for just being an online program. But the one thing I was going to say about this is that when you made a really good point, Kyle, about the a kid gets set to go to college, he gets an early admission, they offer him a package, and maybe he gets a $5,000 scholarship for academics, which is common if you got good grades. What happens though is you just fall into a different bucket when you get college credits. So let's say you get 12 college credits and you got A's across the board. When you get to college, now it's a different set of money they tap into. You're most likely not going to lose money by taking college credits if you're deferring to play sports. In fact, in my family, in both situations, the package was enhanced and they actually got better offers as transfer students than they did. Because remember, even Division I athletes, there's 30 to 50% of the team are going to be non-scholarship players. The reason is every team gets 18 full scholarships tops. Not every program uses 18 scholarships. So let's say I'm a Division I athlete and there's 18 scholarships there. There's 30 kids on the team. So they can sometimes split them up. Sometimes they give just 18 out in full body, but most time they give you, I'll give you a great example of a situation with Division I hockey. My nephew, and Mike knows my nephew, 6'4", 6'5", 230, played for 2 back-to-back Little Caesars national championship teams, #1 overall draft pick coming out in the USHL, first kid drafted in the USHL. Now the draft in the USHL is different than other drafts. That draft does mean something because #1 pick, that's like the NHL. You're going to be on the team and you're going to be, they're going to focus on you. Gets his college offer. First year he pays. Second year he pays half. Third year he gets a full scholarship. Fourth year he gets a full scholarship. So here's one of the best players, big, huge guy, on the NHL draft list, and a great hockey player, doesn't get a full 4-year ride, coming out of the USHL. So don't expect that the guys, that's why you got to be real careful too of aspiring to be a Division I player. You might have just talked yourself into paying more money. That's why exploring both ACHA hockey and Division III hockey is so important. There's some fantastic programs out there at the ACHA level that can throw so much money. Before Long Island became a Division I program, they were offering players 50% as a baseline off tuition to come to their school, off of their in-state tuition to go to the school. Long Island's now a Division I team. They got to adhere to the NCAA rules now, but when they're a club team, they got club money. And if there's a school that's got deep pockets, they can do a lot. Some schools you don't pay for hockey at all at the club level. Some you got to pay the full freight on it. So doing your homework at those levels is very important.
Great. So kind of shifting gears here one more time is that, a player goes and does one camp where his parents register for one camp, like a global or something like that, where there's a ton of different junior teams, college coaches or scouts looking at them and everything. Then you're on an email list, right? Now all of a sudden you're getting every camp that you could possibly imagine, every opportunity coming to you. What is your best advice for parents to sift through that? And the term that I've tried not to use during this call is money grab.
Yeah.
Overused, but we know the term well. But how do they legitimize a good camp from one that is just, man, they're just looking at.
Well, you ask questions, you talk to prior players in your program, and you talk to coaches in your current program. Hey, look, I've been sitting in the stands at USHL camps, main camps, and there is nobody watching players. There's a ref on the ice and two guys on the benches that are former players that are like 22, 23 years old, and that's it. And there's not a coach to be found in the building. And that team still exists in the USHL. Clearly, you don't want to go to a showcase like that or a main camp like that, because it's not going to do you any good. You want to do your homework now. There are programs out there that are privately run that do get a ton of junior and college programs. The one out of Colorado, I forget the name, but it runs out of the Denver area. They do a phenomenal job of getting young, aggressive coaches to come out and watch. And when I say young and aggressive, that means they'll sit there and they'll take notes on lots of players. You'll get there's one in Alabama, the Huntsville area, I think does one. And there's a few other. I'm not trying to say that I know which ones are the best, but you got to do your homework. Is there a track record of players getting watched? Is there really a list of teams that are there in the building that actually show up? Now, the world's changed a little bit because, there's East Coast showcases that, not run by a league or not ran by an individual team. Things like the Chowder Cup, events in the East Coast that are really good events to go to. Now, it used to be you'd see 30, 40, 50 people in the stands that are all scouts for prep schools, for junior teams, and for colleges at every game. Now it's different. And the reason it's different now is most of those teams are professionally run now. In other words, these spring and summer teams are coached and owned by individual private companies. And some of them are big. They run 4 or 5 teams. Some of them only run one team in these events. But instead of being a dad that his son comes to him and says, "Dad, I want to play in the Chowder Cup." And the dad says, "Okay, I'll run the bench for you. Get some of your buddies together." And they put these ad hoc teams together just at the grassroots. These teams now are not drafted, but they're recruited all year round to try to find players that fit into these rosters. What it has done is it's opened the eyes to junior teams and to college coaches to build a relationship with those teams year round. So they're part of knowing who's being recruited to that team, and they use it as part of their recruiting process. And you can see them if you go to the Chowder Cup, and there's a couple other events on the East Coast, and there's other events around the nation. Look at their history. Look at these teams that have been around a lot. you'll start seeing that these guys are also scouts for the USHL, for the NAL, for the NA3, for the EHL. They're general managers of teams now, because there's an integration of those teams into the whole bigger picture of junior and Division I hockey. That wasn't the case years ago. They were actually butts in seats. Now there's not as many butts in seats. There's people calling those guys all year round. Hey, Joe, how's your team looking for the spring? Who do you got on the team and who do you like? And they have these conversations. So you're getting recruited differently now because of the virtual world we live in. And it's not a bad thing. It's just different than what we're used to. We're used to seeing lots of people in the stands.
Yeah, I've also heard that some teams are doing combined, where might be two, three, possibly even four clubs getting together to run a camp. Just so, and the other thing is, the follow up on that is, I've also heard that a lot of the main camps, like Odessa's running a camp where a lot of the, say, lower division coaches, like NA3 coach, goes to their main camps to look at players, because obviously
Yeah.
six
So
teams
Odessa
out
runs
there.
their camp. Odessa runs their camp, their main camp in Chicago, or just in the outskirts of Chicago. I'm not sure what rink they run them out of now.
Prospect.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a legitimate main camp. And although they're not running their own rink, there's teams that do that. They'll run their camp somewhere else, and that's perfectly fine. And let's get back to the first part of that before we talk about Odessa's situation. Going to a pre-draft camp with 3 or 4 teams is awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. There's more eyes on you, more opportunities. That's great. That's almost, that kind of hybrid situation is almost the best situation you could ask for at moving to the junior world. Now, there are 2 different kinds of pre-draft camps inside of a league. There's league sponsored ones where the league holds a showcase for all these players to come in and get looked at. That's good, but you may not always get a set of eyes that are decision makers in the building. For example, they might have a U16 coach in the area that is just going to go in and watch just to check the box for the team. You don't always get, and this is USHL, this is NA3HL, this is NAHL, this is NCDC, all the leagues that have these league prospect camps. I can't say that I've got a lot of good things to say across the board for that way of going about it. You think you're getting 20, 30 sets of eyes on you. And Mike, share what you think about these, but I don't believe you're really getting anywhere near that amount of eyes on you that you think you're getting when you go to those.
Well, I think there's eyes on you, but when you go to a specific team's event, they're all hands on deck at that event, watching all the players and ranking them and things like that. The ones that are run by the league, there's just a lot of people milling around from different teams. Sometimes they jump behind the bench, which is great. Sometimes you'll see them scouting in the stands, which is also great. But also you see them hanging out with each other and talking, and like, it's just kind of a get together of people from that league, and they're not spending the right amount of time watching the event. But, at the end of the day, there's value in those events. But if you're going to ask between that or, maybe a specific team or a grouping of teams, those are going to be a lot more focused as far as like what you're getting out of your exposure.
Yep. What was the second part of that question? I already forgot.
So did I. No, Odessa having a camp and then having like NA3 coaches or different coaches.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
USPHL.
It's not uncommon for your tier 1 and tier 2 programs to have, not only their direct subordinate team. So if I'm a NAL team, my NA3HL coaches are usually directly involved with the main camp. So you've got some eyes there. But the other part of it is they'll invite, a lot of coaches have Canadian roots. So they'll invite a team from the SIJHL. They'll invite a team from Manitoba to come in and watch. They'll invite some, and you'll also see Division I and Division III and ACHA coaches pop in too. I've been to a lot of USHL main camps where, the Division I coach, they use it as a direct pipeline to their team. I've been to a lot of events at the North American 3 level, or I should just say tier 3 level, where ACHA coaches use certain teams and certain main camps as their direct pipeline. They build great relationships with the coaches. They're trusted. And when the coach starts talking about programs, they're number one on the list because they take the time to be at those events. Absolutely. If coaches are working in the summer, if ACHA and Division III coaches and junior coaches are working in the summer and they're going out to other events versus being on the boat, I didn't say that out loud, did I? Then they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's a good sign. And that's a sign that the program's probably a little bit more quality than most if they're putting in that effort.
Oh, you just gave us your safe word, boat, meaning that our time's up. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we could go on all day talking about all the different scenarios. I've just tried to bring up a lot of the questions that Mike and I get asked, 10, 20, 30 times a season, just over and over. There's just so many different questions, and because it's so different for everybody. Everybody's path can be completely different, whether it's
Look,
a lot of
we've got a
similarities.
discussion. We have a discussion group called Junior Hockey Advisor on Facebook. The discussion group has 10,000 members. The vast majority are tier 3 players, the vast majority, but there's also coaches, general managers at all levels, ACHA, all the way up through the Division I ranks. My former coach, Division I coach, is in the actual discussion group. There's a lot of great information there. There's a lot of people that will jump in and help guide you if you have questions. I highly suggest becoming a member of that and also using the videos. We've got Junior Hockey Advisor on YouTube. Jump on and take advantage of those videos. We're non-biased. You won't see sponsorship there. You won't see any solicitation there. It's just information, and Mike can vouch for that. We absolutely try to rip down anybody as soon as they try to start soliciting to get you to buy a gel stick or to buy a hockey camp. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, if you could send me that information. There's, a number of people who it's the summer, it's the weekend, they couldn't make it, and they said, hey, send us any information. So if you could send me that information as to the various podcasts and groups that would be helpful to our families, that would be great. I'll definitely pass it along. I really appreciate your time this morning. I know that we went over, but I think it was good quality discussion here that and it's going to be an ongoing conversation with a lot of these families as they continue to have conversations. Sorry that you had to have another day where you get to see Mike and discuss hockey with Mike. I tried to stay right in the middle of you guys so you couldn't get into it all. But no, it was great, Jeff. Mike, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I think at the end of the day, if all these different questions that we went through and walked through, hopefully it starts noodling around in everybody's mind of other questions that maybe they have and will ask in the future. But I think everyone's aware, even after this call, of just how confusing this whole process can be. And it's why Jeff and I do what we do, and why between you and Kent and myself and the other coaches at the midget level, we take it as our responsibility to try to help navigate this for each parent and each family, because it's so confusing and there's so many different paths, and sometimes they lead into nowhere, and sometimes they lead into similar destinations. So hockey is not easy, and it's unlike all the other sports that people might be more familiar with. So it's why we do what we do.
What's great though is there's so many more opportunities now. Player wants to continue to play after club hockey. There's so many more opportunities now than ever before. The amount of junior leagues out there, the amount of ACHA teams it's crazy when you go on that website and look all the. I mean, it used to be you had to kind of find a school that would have a club team, and now it's like you're looking at these schools and they have not only 1, 2, or sometimes 3. It's great that so many opportunities, but it can be so confusing for families. And, what we try and preach all season long is we we know you have questions. It's not easy. We can have the same conversation 3 different times, and it's so much to. It really is. So Jeff, what you do, the service you provide with your podcast, in spite of your co-host on some of them, is amazing. Oh, it's you guys are really doing a great service out there to the hockey community, and we thank you. We really appreciate your time. And sorry we took you away from your boat.
I
So-
told you guys that I would be talking too long, so I warned you guys ahead of time.
Okay. Well, guys, that's it for today. We appreciate it. Our next skate for the midgets is Monday night at Fifth Third at 8 o'clock. Hope to see you guys out there. And any other questions, let us know. But I'll be passing along all Jeff's information to the family, so as well as a copy of this webinar. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Take care, folks.
Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks,
You're
Jeff.
welcome.